All right, we've got Kendra releases Dropbox connector. So what is this Kendra releases Dropbox connector? We talked about Kendra last episode in how we use it to search the transcripts of this very podcast. And now Dropbox connector. But this is super cool. I think it's pretty straightforward. If you are using Kendra and you want to index a bunch of documents, you can now point it at a Dropbox drive and it will index the documents right there. So, Raul, what do you think the impacts of this are going to be? How much is Dropbox used?
I think for a large number of SMBs, Dropbox is still the place to go and share documents within, the group. I think if I were to compare Google Drive and Dropbox, I'd put Google Drive a little further up the market share list. But Dropbox isn't far behind. I mean, folks have been using Dropbox for years and make it a very standard way of sharing stuff. I think if I were to look at the stream of acquisitions that I've looked at over the last, say, 3 to 5 years, I would say 30 to 40% of those acquisitions end up, sharing due diligence documents and stuff like that over Dropbox, which is interesting. It gives them a certain level of control and access control and permissions and things like that. So it is fairly widely used, I think, across the board. And the fact that now we have a connector to simply connect into that and bring in all of that data is awesome. I'd be interested in understanding what kind of permission schemes and mechanisms they use to separate out the data or to provide some level of access control. Like, do you end up searching everything once all the data is moved into Kendra, or can you access control what people are allowed to see or not see or even search?
That's a good question. You'd imagine that there might hopefully is some inclusion or exclusion criterion that you can set, similar to a lot of the S3 data type connectors.
Exactly.
And actually, speaking of connectors, I think we mentioned this earlier. There's also, so on Kendra, you can look at the set of connectors, and there's Kendra native connectors, and then there's also partner developed connectors.
Correct.
Doing a quick mention, Jive has a connector. Actually, it has two connectors. Scroll down here.
Correct.
Here we go.
And I think the whole number of connectors that now exist for Kendra is pretty awesome. It's a very comprehensive list of, data storage platforms that you'll find over here.
Yeah, there's HP Consolidated Archive.
Yeah. Like, we find Jive being fairly prevalent in a lot of large-scale enterprises where you have tens of thousands of employees who need to collaborate on content. So there have been Jive connectors for Kendra and so on. So it's pretty neat that all of these have really good support within the Kendra ecosystem. So, yeah, it just makes it a no-brainer to kind of start using Kendra. I still don't see a lot of organizations using it or leveraging it for all of their enterprise-wide content. And I just don't understand why not.
I have a small hunch. I think that the Kendra pricing, it's the first step is a big step. I wish there was a developer tier that you could play with it without. I think the first step is $1,000 a month.
I think because it boils down to the number of documents that are going to be set up. So I think the developer edition, again, max queries per day is just 4,000 and $810 a month. And only 10,000 documents. Now, if you look at an organization, the number of documents that you want to be able to search through actually runs into hundreds of thousands, if not millions. Like, if you looked at every call, every meeting, every email sent, every chat stream that exists, you look at all of that data, and if you want it to be searchable enterprise-wide, you're talking about millions of documents. And this kind of pricing seems, very skewed, possibly, and may not work for a lot of people who are trying to do this for their enterprise knowledge base. So I wish AWS would come up with something simpler and easier to get started with, and something that actually, with scale, just becomes really, really cheap.
Yeah, I agree completely. And similarly at the low end, right? I realized, okay, if I was playing with Kendra, made a few, and then left them on, that would hurt at the end of the month.
Oh,
So
would definitely hurt.
I would not
Agreed.
want to do that. So making it easier for developers, solo developers, to experiment with it, so then they can, in their day jobs, suggest this. That I would hope that at some point Kendra had a serverless option where it was just pay per search.
I agree.
All right. Well, on the contents of the article, there we go, Kendra. On the contents itself, without the bigger picture of Kendra that we just discussed, how do we rate this one?
I think this feels very boilerplate to me. Like there's nothing specific about the Dropbox ecosystem or the way you connect or the way you would set any kind of permission streams or what you could. I mean, this feels like a very generic. Oh, we have a new adapter. Replace the word old tool with the new tool now, which is Dropbox, and you basically got the same boilerplate announcement. So I would probably give this like a 3. I don't feel like this goes in deep at all. I don't know if it needs to. That's another conversation, but I think it would have been nice to see, to showcase how easy it is to connect. Any caveats, things that it doesn't do specific to Dropbox, or how easy or difficult the mappings might be between documents and the Kendra schema. That would have been good to mention over here.
Yeah. And like you said, at least address some of those security issues, which here's where you learn more. I agree. I still think it does get us the simplifies. It's a new feature. There's no downside to it.
Absolutely. It definitely doesn't complicate matters. If you had needed to build this all by yourself, then I would have said that this really complicates matters. But the fact that that AWS has created a pattern around Dropbox simplifies this significantly.
Cool. Yeah, I agree completely.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's move on to the next one, which is Credo 19.